Hello everyone, and welcome to my final project for this course. Over the past few months, we've studied some of the most influential thinkers in philosophy, Descartes, Kant, and Heidegger. Each one of them tries to answer big questions about how we know, what it means to be human, and what kind of role philosophy plays in how we live. This video will respond to three big questions that we've been talking about. What are Descartes, Kant's, and Heidegger's philosophies about? How do their views affect how we understand lived experience and embodiment? And how do they connect with the rest of the philosophers we've discussed this semester? So, in chapter 1, sort of like what they were up to. Descartes is often considered the father of modern philosophy, which you stated. In Meditation on First Philosophy, the reading, he's like kind of doubting everything he possibly can, his senses, the physical world, even he gets into like mathematics, until he reaches out. Something he can't doubt was cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. That becomes the foundation of all knowledge for him. The thinking self, the move shifts philosophy inward towards subjectivity. So if I was like thinking, I'm already doing philosophy right now. Like I know that other people have different paradigms than me, but I know that I'm a real person and that I am what this world is what it is because I'm thinking about it. Like we talked about, like taking paths. There's not only two paths, could be a million different paths. In a discourse on method, he talks more about how we can use the reason to discover truth in the sciences and everyday life. His method is built on clarity and certainty. Reject anything that can be doubted and build from there. But that comes with a price. Descartes separates mind and body, which opens up questions later philosophies would wrestle with. Sort of what Kant was up to is he sort of picks up the problem of knowledge and critique of pure reason. He argues that knowledge comes from a combination of intuition and concepts. We don't just passively receive the world, we actively shape our experiences through forms of intuition, like space and time. And categories of the understanding, in other words, the world as we know it is partially constructed by us. And I think that is said that pretty well. Kant also introduces the idea of the thing in itself, a reality that exists independently of us, but that we can never access directly. This is important because it means human knowledge has limits. We can only even know appearances, not things as they are in themselves. Still, he believes we can have certain knowledge within those limits through that, what he calls synthetic a priori judgments. Sort of what Heidegger gets into and tells us is he sort of breaks from, he's the most contrastable. In this reading, like Introduction to Philosophy and Phenomenology of Religious Life, he doesn't want to start with knowledge, but with being. Dasein is what I read, or human existence. He thinks philosophy went wrong when it forgot the question of being and started treating humans as detached thinkers rather than as beings in the world. For Heidegger, the meaning of being is something we live, not just think about. He wants to get back to lived experiences, and that includes things like mood, language, and just like caring about each other. He challenges the abstract, detached view of the self that Descartes and Kant rely on. Instead, he says that our being is always like situated. We are thrown into a world, into relationships, into time, and our understanding comes from there. So now we sort of get into the second part, the second chapter of lived experience and embodiment. So how do their views relate to lived experiences? This was like sort of like Descartes focuses like on like the mind, and the body is kind of, he refers it to as like a machine, and it's separate from the soul. This is dualism. which we talked about in class, and puts the experiences in our heads, so to speak. So while his approach gives us clarity and certainty, it risks disconnecting us from the world. He's not really interested in the body's role in shaping how we live or understand, but we get the sense that philosophy happens from kind of like, there's two forms. Like there's your body, and then there's also your mind, which they both have different ways of your choices in life. Kant, he brings in the body through intuition, which I said. He says space and time are the forms through which we experience anything, and those are hardwired into us. Still, he keeps a strong division between appearance and reality, so we're always a step removed from the world as it is. His philosophy respects human limits, but it still treats experience as something filtered through universal, impersonal structures. Heidegger sees lived experiences as like primary. In his view, we don't just think about the world we are in. We are in the world, always already involved in it. Like we're all living right now, we're all involved in this world. He talks about things like anxiety, morality, and everyday life as a fundamental part of how we understand ourselves. Embodiment isn't something extra, it's the condition of our being, he says. In the text Phenomenology of Religious Life, he sort of argues that philosophical insight can arise from experiences like guilt, your religious faith, or just like any rational thinking or reflecting. And that opens the door for us for a more honest and rich understanding of what it means to be human. So do these philosophies help us come home to ourselves? Descartes gets us started by teaching us to question everything and build from certainty. But in doing so, he separates us from our bodies and the world. Kant brings us closer to ourselves by recognizing the human role in shaping experiences. But he keeps things very sort of formal. Heidegger is one who insists we start from lived experience, and for that reason, he may bring us closest to ourselves. Even when he's telling us that being itself is still a mystery. So just connecting it to the whole semester, I've really enjoyed this class. It kind of, all this connects to the questions we've been asking all semester. For example, when we studied different philosophers, we saw a similar move towards lived experience. Emphasizing the individual and how truth is something we must live, not just think about. Heidegger picks up on that, pushing even further by saying that being itself is something that we relate to through experience, not reason. We also talked about in the reading, I searched this on ChatGPT because I didn't really know what it was. But we talked more sort of about existentialism and how thinkers like Heidegger were free and responsible for giving meaning to our lives. It wouldn't be possible without first challenging the detached rationalism of Descartes, or the strict structures of Kant. It's kind of opened up ways of thinking about philosophy that are more grounded, embodied, and responsive, sort of just to life. And that includes discussions about worldviews, politics, religion, and even everyday practices that shape shapes who we are. So we started this semester asking, what is philosophy? I think that we should end it sort of with Heidegger, and that philosophy is a way of being, a questioning that brings us back to our lives. But to get there, we had to go through Descartes' doubt and Kant's limits. And at the end of the day, they're all part of the same story. So for my case study, I've picked something that we are all familiar with, and that's social media and just sort of your mental health. Social media on the surface, it might seem like a tool, just an app we open, scroll, like posts, check up on friends, and that's it. But when we look deeper, social media is a powerful space where people's identity is crafted, edited, and performed. That makes it kind of a perfect lens for what I just talked about with Kant, Heidegger, and Descartes. Just sort of because it speaks into lived experience. So let's start with Descartes. What did I say here? His philosophy tells us that the self is first and foremost a thinking thing. Like he said, cogito ergo sum, the body for him is kind of mechanical, useful but not essential to who we are. So applying this to social media, our online selves are shaped by thought. Like if I'm going to post on Instagram, it's the caption we write, the decision to crop out a friend or not. If something were to happen, like say I have a picture of my friend and we're in a fight, then I'll crop him out. It crafts like an identity about what we think about before we show it. So social media is kind of like, it's reflected a curated version of our minds. But obviously there's a cost. It sort of like splits the self from the body in social media, 100%. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got for him. Kant would agree that we don't access the world or even ourselves directly. In the reading Critique of Pure Reason, Kant says all our experiences is filtered through categories like space, time, and causality. What we see isn't raw reality. It's already shaped by the conditions of the human mind. So social media is full of filters. I can take a picture and put a dog on my face. We interpret algorithms on our For You page on what we like. Just like Kant's idea of phenomena and noumena, there's a version of ourselves we can see. Our profiles on Instagram, the photos in our phone, our bios, like I said. And it's a deeper self that kind of just feels like out of reach. Like if someone were to go on my Instagram, they have their own experiences, and I'm not myself when I'm on my phone. Like it's someone else who's like away from themselves on their phone looking at other people. That sounded a little weird. So now, lastly, Heidegger, he quoted, "You've forgotten being," in the reading Introduction to Philosophy and Phenomenology of Religious Life. He reminds us that we don't start with isolated thinking or with categories. We start with existence. We're beings in the world. To him, social media reflects a kind of, it's not authentic. We fall into das Man, the anonymous they, who tell us how to speak, what to post, how to look. We scroll endlessly. We try to perform constantly, and we lose the ability to be still, to be present, and to be ourselves sometimes. We are thrown into this digital world, but instead of facing our freedom, we often escape into distraction. Heidegger wouldn't just criticize social media. He'd ask us to return to ourselves, not by deleting our accounts, but by reawakening to the fact that we are being, not just performing. He might call us to experience, we experience different moods. Sometimes we're silenced, even boredom. And it's kind of loses our chances to feel our own being again if we continue to just doom scroll on social media. So, conclusion time. Thank you for watching. What have we learned from walking through the minds of Kant, Heidegger, and Descartes? It's a great question. We saw that Descartes built the foundation of modern thought by turning inward, separating mind from body in a search for certainty. Kant showed us how our minds shape the very world we perceive, but it also shows the limits of what we can truly know. And then we saw Heidegger break it all open. Heidegger just got in there and said, he kind of reminded us that We are not just minds or machines, we are beings. That's hard. Thrown into a world, always in motion, always trying to make meaning. So, through the lens of social media, we watch how these ideas still live with us in the way we craft our accounts, filter our experience, and sometimes we lose ourselves trying to look better for this person or trying to show people that, I'm busy or I'm going to the gym. So we lose ourselves. We see the same questions emerge. Who am I? What does it mean to be real? What does it mean to be home? In the end, maybe that's what philosophy is all about. Not solving problems, but asking better questions. Not escaping life, but turning toward it. Not just thinking, but being. Thanks for watching. Have a great summer.